I understand by listening to you that migration is a major topic in Italian foreign policy, especially with regard to EU level negotiations.
Yes, basically, this is really one of the major interests that Italy has in its EU policies. And basically, I think that in the last years, this issue has been also come to the attention of many EU officials and of the European Union in general. It was said many times, and now it's become a reality that migration crisis, migration issues are a European challenge that needs a European response and solution.
As sea arrivals fluctuate and the EU's new migration pact takes shape, Italy finds itself at the heart of Europe's migration dilemmas. Positioned on the Mediterranean front line, it must navigate complex demands from domestic labor shortages to regional instability and EU-level negotiations. To examine this balancing act, I'm interviewing Maurizio Canfora, Vice Minister Plenipotentiary and Vice Director General for European Integration at Italy's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. With decades of diplomatic service and direct involvement in shaping Italy's European strategy, Mr. Canfora offers rare insight into how Italian migration policy is crafted, contested, and negotiated in Rome, Brussels, and beyond. In our conversation, we explore how migration became a central theme in his career, how Italy aligns or fails to align its migration approach with labor market needs, and how border management plays out in practice. We also delve into Italy's diplomacy with France and Germany, its influence on the EU's policies, and its cooperation with Libya and Tunisia. This conversation offers an insider's view on the decisions and dilemmas that define Italy's migration diplomacy today. So, Mr. Canfora, thank you very much for taking part in this interview.
Thank you to you, and thank you for this very generous introduction you made of my professional career.
Let's review a little bit, yes, your personal journey. How did you encounter the topic of immigration in your career?
Yes, okay. I've been following for the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs EU issues for quite a long time. All in all, in 30 years of career, I would say 18 have been devoted to EU issues in various fields, especially in the external relations field. So also development cooperation before and now more horizontally, I am director for EU integration in the DG Europe of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This means, in concrete terms, that I am also responsible in dialogue with our Ministry of Interior to define the Italian position in the JHA Council as regards EU migratory issues. So basically, this is how I deal with the issue of migration that came at the end of this very long negotiation on the new common European asylum system, what is called in Brussels jargon the Asylum and Migration Pact.
Mhm, mhm,
It was negotiated for around 17 years, and luckily enough, when I took up my position, the council managed to find an agreement with Parliament on a new structure for the EU migration and asylum system. So this is how I started to deal with migration issues related to the EU affairs.
mhm. So you mentioned 4 decades of career, out of which 18 have been devoted to migration. Even though as
EU affairs to migration, I would say the last 5 years.
Okay, 18 were devoted to EU affairs and 5 were devoted to migration within those 18 years.
Yes.
Okay, and these are the last 5 years.
Yes.
Okay, so the topic of immigration is gaining momentum in Italian diplomacy, and it's becoming something because you still have, as I mentioned, your position, uh, an horizontal position. That is, you are not someone
I am,
specifically
I am not
uh,
dealing specifically with migration issue, but
migration, and yet.
I'm preparing the Italian position on EU migration issues and EU migratory and asylum issues within the Council. So basically, every member states represent itself in the Council of Ministers and in various working groups preparing the work of Council of Ministers. So we have a JHA Council, Justice and Home Affairs Council, where normally ministers of interior and of justice sit alternatively, and their position has to be prepared by preparatory work, which is done by public officials in the various ministries in the various member states. And in Italy, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has a coordinating role in establishing what Italy is going to say in those tables in Brussels. So I am part of this process from the Italian side in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Mhm, mhm. A very crucial position indeed. And so I understand by listening to you that migration is a major topic in Italian foreign policy, especially with regard to EU level negotiations.
Yes, basically, this is really one of the major interests that Italy has in its EU policies. And basically, I think that in the last years, this issue has been also come to the attention of many EU officials and of the European Union in general. It was said many times, and now it's become a reality that migration crisis, migration issues are a European challenge that needs a European response and solution. So this is why we are so interested in putting this in the EU agenda as much as possible. And in the last, I would say, 2 or 3 years, in the European Council, which is the summit of the various head of states and government of our leaders, migration has always been in the agenda, most of the time out of an Italian request. But the European Commission is quite much aligned with this view of the importance of this challenge for the future, and most European governments have now shared what's the view of the problem seen from this angle of the Mediterranean, also from the Italian angle. Although they are geographically located elsewhere in Europe, there is a common view now developing in Brussels on how to deal with this phenomenon.
Mhm, mhm. Oh, very interesting. And so let's start with let's say the roots of Italy's position on these issues. So obviously, Italy is concerned by certain migration flows, but let's not forget also that Italy is a major country of tourism and therefore had and also pilgrimages, and which may affect also its position on border controls. And in addition to that, Italy is as well as a specific labor market. Italy is doing rather well, it's my opinion, from the economic point of view in the EU today. Perhaps you disagree, or I don't know, but I have the feeling that the Italian economy is doing relatively well recently, and so this could generate some also labor demand in the country. The Italian labor market is segmented. There is notoriously a large also informal labor market in Italy. So how do those various parameters weigh on Italy's position on migration? Do they contribute to mitigate the objective of restricting migration flows, and how?
Okay, let me clarify something relating to your question. First of all, when we talk about the migration challenge in the way I did before, I was referring to the problem of irregular migration, not to the issue of migration in general. Of course, a country like Italy, which is also an aging country and a country with a very strong industrial economy, will have to generate in the future a number of workforce, which will be difficult to generate if we continue with this decreasing rate in natality. So basically, we need migration. Everybody knows it. It's an economic necessity. The problem is not migration per se, which is a perfectly natural phenomenon. It exists, it has existed for centuries. The problem is the increase in the very strong irregular migration flows coming from certain transit countries in the Mediterranean. So this is what has plagued Italy and as a consequence of all the EU in the last decades. And this is the kind of challenge I was referring to. I was not referring to the issue, the general issue of how to manage migration as such in terms of legal migration and integrating it into our economy, because it is clear and we also recognize that migration is and will be necessary in order to provide our economy with the necessary workforce. So this is just as a clarification for the concept we are going to use when we talk about migration problems or migration challenges in Europe. We are talking basically on how to tackle the issue of irregular migration and the protection of our external borders. Uh, of course, this issue is closely linked and interrelated with how to ensure that people can actually legally migrate to the EU. These are two faces of the same coin. If you don't have any legal means to enter the European Union because our visa policy is not consistent with the needs of the economy, of course, this will generate business, also criminal business, in countries where people want to migrate and find better life conditions in the EU. So these are those two sides of the same coin, but one is highly problematic. So the issue of irregular migration creates, of course, tensions, social tensions and concerns in the public opinion and also for the security of our cities. And so this is the issue we need to solve. But to solve this, of course, we need a horizontal view also on the other problem that you were mentioning, which is the one of how to ensure that we have enough workforce for our economies in Europe. So how we ensure a well maintained and orderly dealt legal migration flow. These two things are two separate issues, basically interrelated, but we deal them also methodologically with different instruments. And Italy has also made proposals to try and combine the reflection on these problems in a comprehensive view. If you want, I can go on this, but I don't know if
Yeah,
you have
no,
any
but yeah,
more
the question was on when you refer these are the two sides of the same coin. Yes, exactly on this aspect. That is, it was a time when Italy was skeptical of very stringent visa policies, precisely for the reasons I was mentioning: tourism, pilgrimages, and also Italy was ready to regularize migrants when they had entered the workforce informally. But all these policies clash with a more strict policy towards irregular migrants.
Mm.
But yeah, listening to you, you seem to oppose the two, as if the policies that may move the lines between irregular and regular migrants were no longer very much under discussion. That is to say, the visa policy is settled, the instrument of possible regularization also is settled in a certain way, and
Yeah.
therefore it's no longer about moving the line between irregular and regular migrants so much. It's just about dealing with people who are irregular and will remain so, whatever the
No,
policy evolutions.
no, also in this, I need to tell you that, first of all, I think that there are here different concepts that are a little bit put together in a confused way. So, in my view, uh, first of all, we need to clarify that the EU has a common asylum policy because of the Schengen acquis, but we don't have at EU level a common asylum policy because we have 27 member states that retain competence on their asylum systems. So basically, we coordinate, of course, as far as it is really possible, these various 27 asylum policies, but you can see that the EU is very large, so basically you will have different interests and also different needs depending on where you are situated. If you are a large country in the Mediterranean or another one with two sides, one in the Mediterranean, one in the Atlantic, and then you are a landlocked country in Europe, or you have a big eastern border bordering now with instability and war in in Ukraine. Of course, the interests of these 27 member states are very different. So basically, it is very difficult to try and find a common ground among 27 member states with the 27 different asylum policies. There are those member states who are in a recession and those member states who are, of course, in a period of economic growth, member of the very same European Union. They will have, of course, different interests in terms of opening up or less their labor market. So I think this is the major issue now to solve, to
Okay,
try
so
and have
let's
more common view on a common asylum policy. This will be very difficult because it will require a treaty change, but without a synchronized approach in this field, it will be very difficult to deal with the challenge of migration in a consistent way.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah. But obviously, each EU member state keeps their own asylum legislation, and but yes, I mean, my question was more about the definition precisely of these national policies that are pertinent to immigration, including why not asylum, but more importantly also visa policies, regularization. And but I understand that these are not so much the focus of the discussion now, which are more to do with European instruments to manage clearly identified irregular migration. So on this topic, how does your ministry assess the effectiveness of current border management strategies in around Italy, and including the role of Frontex?
Well, Frontex has been quite useful in trying and prevent certain criminal trafficking of migrants and human smuggling and human trafficking. But of course, this is not the real answer. The real answer is trying and cooperate closely with those transit countries where migrants are allowed to leave illegally in order to try and reach the European Union. And so this is the strategy we have pushed at EU level, and it is also the strategy that the EU is adopting now. So basically, trying and encompassing the so-called external dimension of the migratory phenomenon. This means that we need to try and cooperate and have a dialogue with, as far as Italy is concerned, especially countries in the northern side of Africa and the southern shore of the Mediterranean, so that we can try and work with them so that those traffics can be stopped, and so we and diminish the numbers of people risking their life at sea trying to irregularly arrive to the European Union. So basically, this is now the focus of the discussion at EU level, and this is what also Italy is defending in the Council and at the European Council. And there is a growing consensus among all member states on the efficiency of these tools, of this dialogue, of this. Basically, it's a foreign policy dialogue with a lot of instruments inside, and of cooperation with countries such as Tunisia, but also in the future Egypt, Morocco,
Mhm,
Jordan.
mhm, mhm, mhm. So yes, your crucial focus is not so much to try to control Italian borders per se, but more to cooperate with countries of transit
It,
that are nearby. This is a more efficient manner to control migration flows.
it's if you have less chaos, let's say, and less departures from the southern shore of the Mediterranean towards Europe, you also have a easier job controlling your border, which in the case of Italy is basically a maritime border. So it's very difficult to control, especially because you cannot refuel, so send back people at sea, because this is against international and European
Push back, yeah, you cannot push back people at
pushback.
sea.
Exactly, you cannot have a refoulement of these
No
people.
refoulement, yeah.
Them back. It's of course easier to protect your border, your land border, because there people are not at sea, and so they are not risking their lives if you push them back somehow in an irregular way and an illegal way.
Mhm, 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 absolutely. So you mentioned various countries. Is the focus primarily on Tunisia and Libya?
Basically, the focus has been on in the past on Tunisia, because this is the country from where most irregular departures were taking place, at least in the last 3 years, towards Europe and towards Italy in particular. Of course, we try and have a cooperation also with Libya. Of course, we have an internationally recognized government, which is the one with which Italy is cooperating, keeping also alive a dialogue with the other side in the Cyrenaic area of Libya, where a de facto government is in place. Easier is to have a dialogue with Egypt, for instance. And this is something that we do bilaterally, but also via the European Union. And basically, this idea of having a dialogue with those countries has developed in the EU with the launching by the European Commission of a new form of comprehensive agreement. They call them the Strategic Partnership Agreements, SPAs, that have been already concluded with these countries that I've just mentioned. So Egypt, and starting with Tunisia. The first one was with Tunisia. It was called a Memorandum of Understanding based on a strategic partnership. Then you have a strategic partnership agreement with Egypt, and you will have one soon, I think, with Jordan too. Uh, the idea of this agreement is to try and solve the issue of migration, of irregular migration, by trying and working with this country on their own economic development. So basically, you try and develop some sort of economic cooperation with these countries on various fronts, so especially in the energy, climate area, and also in the creation of a viable private economy in those countries. And through this agreement and through this economic cooperation, you get them also to try and solve the issue of their borders, which are not sufficiently controlled. So basically, what happens is that criminal groups can organize those boat trips across the Mediterranean and trafficking and the trafficking of human beings from Sahel till Europe. Um, so basically, we assist them economically, and also we cooperate with their police force and justice system so that they can become more efficient in controlling their territories and to sanctioning these groups of criminals organizing these boat trips through the Mediterranean. This is what Italy has done, and this is what the European Union is going to do in working with those countries through this agreement that I've just mentioned. The focus of this agreement, of course, is not specifically migration. Migration is just one of the aspects of the cooperation we will establish and we are trying to establish with them.
Yes, so these are comprehensive agreements of economic partnership, and but on the EU side, there is an expectation that in the framework of these agreements, there will be also specific cooperation on border management, so that those countries better control their borders and prevent the transit
Yeah.
of irregular migrants. So you have just said that with Libya, the situation is very difficult for since the fall of Muammar Gaddafi. Therefore, I understand it's going to be a serious problem because Libya is one of the top country of origin of irregular migrants to Italy. And what about Tunisia? How is the cooperation with Tunisia going?
So with Tunisia, actually, I would say that the cooperation has been a big success in the sense that they were on the brink of bankruptcy around 3 years ago, and through this agreement with the European Union and also through the bilateral cooperation, they have managed to somehow bail out the situation of their economy. So uh, we think that they are now willing to have a dialogue with the EU and with Italy. And in terms of results, of concrete results, we have seen a strong decrease in the numbers of irregular flows coming from Tunisia, which has also led last year to halving, so to cutting by half the numbers of irregular migrants traveling in what we call the central Mediterranean route. So the route starting from Tunisia, but also somehow from Libya towards Italy. Because you need to imagine that these three countries, Egypt, Libya, and Tunisia, they have, of course, their borders, but these borders are basically very porous. So it was it was the case that migrants waiting and stationed in order to leave for Europe, based in Libya, were smuggled regularly to Tunisia. So basically, if you control and if you close somehow some of the hubs in Tunisia, you also try and have and control the phenomenon in Libya. The same The same case applies to Egypt. Egypt, of course, is closer to Cyrenaica rather than to Tripolitania, but also there you had, of course, a porous border where migrants transiting through Libya to try and reach Europe were actually originating or coming from Egypt. So if you work with Egypt, you can also somehow try and control the flows that are continuing to accumulate in Libya. So this is just to try and answer your question on the big issue and the big problem that Libya would pose or is posing now because of the chaotic situation in the country. You try and block the hubs from where these migrants are actually living, which are basically located in Tunisia or were located in Tunisia now through the cooperation we have with them and through the cooperation the EU has established with them. These routes seem to have dry up and be blocked. And this is also the result that we hope we will achieve with Egypt on the other side. As far as Libya is concerned, yes, it's an issue because basically you have also seen that the country is somehow mm, no longer under the control of the international recognized government of Mr. Beidba, which is ahead and is having a lot of troubles in trying and resist to the attempt of provoking a complete and total civil war instigated by the Libyan militias. So basically, this is the problem that we have to face now. We believe, however, that the strategic partnership agreements model that has functioned well with Tunisia and is also functioning with Egypt in the future, when the situation in Libya will stabilize, could prove also an efficient model for Libya. So we don't give up on the necessity of stabilizing Libya, because this will be key for the security not only of Italy but of the entire European Union, given the position where Libya occupies at the center of the Mediterranean.
Mhm. Thank you for all those details. I have a few questions on that. Uh, uh, Let me ask the three of them together, and then you will reply. You are looking a lot towards Brussels to address this question. I understand it's because the EU is funding, is providing a lot of the economic assistance that is, if I may say, the bargaining chip in the migration negotiation with those countries. So that's my first question, to confirm that this is EU funding that is a crucial element to achieve cooperation there. My second question is, how do you explain that Tunisia was able to cut in half the number of irregular migrants coming to Europe from its territory? Is it better border management? Is it that they were able to dismantle a particular smuggling network? How did they make it to cut it in half? And is this reduction sustainable? Because I understand it was cut in half between 2023 and 2024, if I have well understood. So that's my second question. How did they make it? And my third question is, you say it's very important to stabilize Libya, independently of the negotiations you may have with Tunisia and Egypt. What are your policy on the way to stabilize Libya? Some may say I could even think of possibly an intervention in the country. So how do you consider the possibility of stabilizing Libya? So that's my third question. So many questions together. Feel free to reply in the order you would like.
So I will reply in the very order you formulated them. So first of all, we rely a lot on the European Union. Yes, of course, but this is not so much because the European Union is providing the funding. First of all, the funding coming from the European Union comes basically also from Italy because Italy is the third largest contributor to the European Union, and we are a net contributor, so we give more money than we actually receive internally from the European Union. So basically, it's not just a matter of funding; it's a matter of having the EU taking responsibility for the control of its border, which, according to the Schengen Agreement and the Schengen concept, has been somehow delegated to external borders member states. So member states who have an external border, and Italy, with its around 3,000 kilometer of coastal lines, has a very large and critical maritime external border, and this external border is very costly and is also very difficult to control for the reasons I was mentioning before. So basically, but this is an external border not only of Italy but of the European Union. So basically, it's a responsibility of Italy, but it's also a responsibility of the European Union to try and control its borders in order to ensure the functioning of the Schengen system. So basically, this is the reason why we are counting on the EU, because this is a European problem. It's a European challenge. It's not an Italian problem or an Italian challenge. And the kind of agreement that European Union has launched via the first mandate of of President of the Commission von der Leyen is basically been done because they have realized in Brussels that this is a common problem and it's related to the functioning of the fourth liberty, the liberty of movement of people. So if you want to continue to have a functioning Schengen area and to keep the free movement of people within the European Union, you need to control your external borders. And if you have a country which is basically a country surrounded by a huge and difficult to manage external border, you need to help this country to try and solve the problem for the entire EU, and not only in the interest of Italy, but in the interest of France and of Germany and of all other landlocked countries. Some of them have only internal borders because, for instance, in Benelux, they have only internal borders within the European Union. So the management of these borders, also within the Schengen system, is basically free for them, while other first entry so-called member states such as Italy or Spain or Greece, they need to actually manage the border for the entire 27 member states communities. So this is why we are so much interested that the EU is taking responsibility and somehow also charge of this problem, because it's not only a matter of funding or of EU budget, but it's much an issue related to the responsibility to claim for having a functioning and a well-functioning Schengen system.
And this responsibility entails funding, but also perhaps um, patrolling, human means
Yes,
to
it
control the border.
entails, of course, human means, but also a unified approach towards the problems of the transit countries. So basically, not everybody was happy, especially in the European Parliament, that we were starting a dialogue with Tunisia because, of course, of the clear rule of law and fundamental rights issues that you have in the Tunisian government. But you need somehow to try and solve these problems through dialogue. And so basically, all member states should try and see things in a unified and comprehensive approach and a common way. So basically, the EU is the way we can achieve that. So to convince everybody, also those who do not have the problem directly at their border, to understand the position other member states are in.
Mhm.
So it's not so much a matter of resources, of funding, of manpower. Of course, this is also one element, but the real issue is a political one and a conceptual one. If you have a European Union with a functioning Schengen system, you need to have well-protected external borders, and the burden of this protection cannot be only for those member states who happen to be geographically located where the crises are, but a shared responsibility of all member states. So
Mhm.
this was the first question.
Mhm. Thank you.
Sorry, I will try and answer the second one on Tunisia and the third one on Libya at the same time. So basically, on Libya, first of all, it's well above my pay grade to make prediction or establish if Italy is going to intervene in Libya. My bet is that we are not going to intervene militarily. I am thinking you were implying in Libya because our constitution doesn't allow this. We cannot use war or something that we do not call war, but it is actually a war in order to solve international controversies deriving from instability or insecurity in the Mediterranean. So this I don't think it's going to happen. But basically, the European Union has already established one of its CSDP missions in Libya. It's called UBAM, and it's a civilian mission which had as a mandate the one of helping and assisting Libyan authorities to better manage their own borders and better organize their own border systems. So I think Italy was instrumental also in establishing this mission and trying to keep it alive and functioning. Of course, the security situation in Libya, as I said before, is very difficult, and I think this mission has basically not achieved all the potential that he had in order to help Libyan authorities to try and better manage their borders and control these traffics and prevent that human trafficking continues. But this is the way we should continue to act, to try and be engaged in Libya and try to establish a means within the EU toolbox to assist them and helping them in managing migration flows. As far as the Libyan security is concerned, as you know, there is another military operation in place, but this is a maritime one. It's called Irini, and they are, of course, they have a mandate which is related more to the prevention of weapons to come to the Libyan territory. These are also example on how the European Union, without direct military involvement, without boots on the ground, can try and stabilize Libya. And these are all instruments that Italy favors and will continue to support also in the future. As far as Tunisia is concerned, I think the government, through the political also and diplomatic legitimacy we give it through the conclusion of those agreements, and prestige and international reputation is very important also in the Arab world and in the Maghreb. This government in Tunisia was somehow spurred to try and better make use of their own internal means to control their own borders. So it was, of course, uh, a diplomatic exercise, a successful one.
What has been Italy's relationship with France and Germany, especially on migration control? How would you evaluate the relationship between those two countries? Obviously, it's it's perhaps a tough question because, especially in the French case, there has been notorious cases of disagreement. But what is your assessment?
Well, it's not because I'm a diplomat, it's because I think it is true. I think that the relationship between these three major countries of the European Union has been instrumental that we actually had an agreement on the new Pact of Asylum and Migration. So basically, without an agreement between Italy and Germany, but also France, we would never have ended this never-ending negotiation of 17 years in 2022, as we did. So basically, apart from polemic that may appear in the press and also be fueled by different different aspects of what you call in France the politique politicienne. I think that the major interests of Italy and France on the migration front are aligned, and as a consequence, also the interest of Italy, Germany, and France remain aligned. Uh, well, if you want, I can go into details
Yeah,
because, of course,
yes,
as I said before, we now have in the European Union a consensus that migration is a European challenge and that it has to be dealt with primarily through the instruments of the so-called external dimension. So we need to cooperate with the countries from where migrants are coming in an irregular way in order to try and create a new setting where we can uh, all cooperate to prevent these irregular departures. This consensus at EU level was not there 5 or 6 years ago. France, Italy, and Germany had different views. The view that the external dimension was key was basically promoted strongly by Italy alone and other first entry member states such as Greece and Spain, but somehow rejected by continental member states such as Germany, because what they saw was just the second bit of the travel of irregular migrants. So they saw these migrants landing in Lampedusa and then somehow after a few years miraculously resurfacing back in France or in Germany because they said Italy didn't do an efficient job in controlling their own borders and allowed them to use the privilege of the Schengen area in order to go to France and Germany. Well, this idea that we had in France and Germany and in the other continental member states was basically wrong in the sense that prima facie you can see the problem in that way, but basically this way of seeing the problem neglects the fact that we are not facing two phenomena. So first of all, the arrival of these migrants in Lampedusa, and second, the movement of these migrants to France or to Germany. These are all parts of the same trip. So what they bought these desperate people in back in the Sahel or in Africa is a safe passage. Let's call him safe, but it's of course not safe at all. But a safe passage from Libya or Tunisia to Europe, but Europe means for them, of course, where their families are already, so basically in the northern part of Europe. And so for them, arriving in Italy is not arriving where they want to go in Europe. Italy, and especially Sicily and Lampedusa, were not and are not their end station. What they want to do and what they are interested to do is to try and reunite with their families or relatives or villagers that they have somewhere else in Northern Europe and to try to get an asylum there, so in Germany or in France. So this is just one trip, and so if we don't solve the problem from the beginning, from the start, from the departure, this problem will reverberate itself endlessly later on. So this is how we convince them that it was also in their interest to try and promote this cooperation on the external dimension of the migratory flows. Uh, Germany started this, started to understand this, and we had a very good cooperation with Germany. The last Merkel and then the Scholz government, and through this agreement, basically the new pact of asylum and migration could pass. As far as France is concerned, France is still another very complex issue because France is basically in this after the Brexit. France is basically in a very uncomfortable situation because on the one hand, France is a first entry member state because France is also a Mediterranean external border. Of course, it's farther away than Italy from the Maghreb, so it's basically not the first point where migrants or boats arrive and land. But then after the Brexit, you also have another delicate border in the English Channel. And so you have also a number of migrants who actually want to come to France, not to reunite, not anymore to reunite with their family, but just to try to jump to the UK, which is a third country outside the European Union. And so basically you have become a first entry member state, but in somehow you are also a transit country. You have the same problems that transit countries in Northern Africa are facing because you have those migrants that try to jump to the United Kingdom. So the situation in France is very delicate. So I somehow understand also, although I don't justify them, the fiery polemics that sometimes we read on the French press on the role of Italy and other first entry member states as far as the control of external borders is concerned. But the only way to try and solve together these problems is it's through dialogue in Brussels, and this is what is happening now.
Mhm, mhm. Thank you very much for those details. And so you confirm that the agreement on also external relations between Italy and Germany has been crucial in the resolution of the pact on migration and asylum in Brussels. Okay, all right. So we have some public here with Lisa Setanelli. Would you like Lisa to ask a question
Yes.
to Mr. Canfora?
I'm Mr. Canfora. We already know each other. So, yes, I think that Mr. Canfora has given a very good framework about the immigration issue for Italy and the politics over there. I was wondering, changing the level, like on the social level, how has the image of the immigrants changed over the time in Italy? So, do you think that we can also talking about on an improvement about the perception of the immigrant, or there is an increasing tendency towards social discrimination, exclusion? That's my question.
Well, I think that to answer this question, you need, first of all, to differentiate between irregular immigrants and legal migrants. As you know, in Italy, especially in the industrial north of Italy, quite a high number of workers and in the workforce also of big Italian companies and industries, the ones that remain in the northern part of the country. Most of the workers are legal migrants and people coming from third countries. These people, of course, they established themselves in Italy in the last 20, 15 years. And of course, they married, they have families, they have children, and these children, they go to school with our children. I don't have children, but I would say our in the sense of with Italian children. And so they learn the Italian language in our schools. For someone of my generation, I will try and answer from a biographical point of view. I'm in my 50s. So for someone of my generation, I grew up in Italy, and it was a different Italy than it is today. Where when I was born, basically you never had foreign people serving you in bars or coffees or in restaurants, and you never saw factory workers coming from Africa in Italy. So now it has totally changed, and also when I attended school, I didn't have any foreigner friend at school. We were all Italian and from the same city, basically. So this has now really changed, and it's something that for someone of my generation, it's really a big change. I think for someone of your generation, Lisa, this is normal now, and I think it's normal for most Italians. But we are talking of people legally resident in Italy and people who have a job and who have a family and who are somehow integrated in the Italian society. Uh, it's a different matter when you talk to common people, about illegal immigrants. For them, in my generation, so at my time, I still remember people. Uh, Italy is at least nominally a Christian country. So when I was young, this religious sentiment was probably stronger than today, and I think, and I remember that were the first immigrants and also the illegal ones started to come to Italy. Most of the people were watching them with a sentiment of pity, and somehow they were sympathetic to their pleas, and they were trying to help them. And they were probably more open to the idea that we are now a rich country, we can afford a few more people arriving in Italy, also if they are illegally arriving. In the last 15 years, the situation completely changed because numbers, of course, have soared, and also the response of the reception system. In each country, you have a reception system linked to social services, to the church, etc. They have been overwhelmed. And so basically, most of these immigrants, they started to become prey of the Italian criminal networks, and so they started to become part of criminal gangs, or also working in a regular way for small businesses not respecting the law. And so basically, people see this, and there is a growing feeling of anxiety towards this situation, which is considered abnormal. And so basically, this has changed. You can see it very well, and you can see it also in the political results of our elections.
Yes, I confirm. So I'm okay. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So thank you very much, Mr. Canfora. One very last question. Now that the pact is solved, what is your big project now at the ministry on which you are working?
Well, I'm working on something totally different, but that relates to one of the questions you raised, the issue of money, because basically we are coming in 2027 to the end of the 7 years budget cycle of the European Union, and the member states and parliament will have to gather and negotiate a new budget for the EU for the next 7 years. And this, of course, will put pressure on other voices and headings of the EU and national budgets.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for all those details and for taking part in this interview.
Okay. Thank you to you.